So welcome, good evening, and thank you for joining our weekly Parsha in My Life. They tell the story this rabbi was hired in a new shul, and they invite him the first Shabbos to give a sermon, and he's all excited, and he gets up there and gives a speech. After he's done, the president comes over and says, "Thank you for your two speeches." He says, "I actually only gave one speech." So the president says, "No, it was two speeches." He says, "Why two?" So the president says, "Because this was your first speech and your last speech." So this week's Parsha, God tells Moses to give his people the news of the impending redemption, but they do not listen to him. And we start in this week's Parsha by that God goes ahead and tell him to tell the people to go ahead and hear that Moses is going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. But Moses appealed to God, saying, the Israelites would not listen to me. If they wouldn't listen to me, how would Pharaoh listen to me when my lips are plugged? So Moses employing here what become a popular method of learning. And this popular method of learning is known as something called kal v'chomer. Kal means easy, and chomer means a little difficult. If I can lift 50 pounds, then I could certainly lift 25. But if I can't lift 50 pounds, how do you expect me to lift 100 pounds? So if the Jews did not listen to me, certainly King Pharaoh would not listen to me. But the logic here seems flawed. The Torah clearly states that the Hebrews, which our ancestors, our bubbies and zadis were called in Egypt, could not listen to him because they could barely breathe, and they were subjected to harsh labor. Now, Pharaoh was the king who had the mental and physical space to listen. Reminding my days in Cuba when the people on the street didn't have clothing or food. And when I came to Castro's palace, you felt like you're in Beverly Hills. So the people, the slaves, our grandparents couldn't breathe. So they didn't listen. Pharaoh, he could listen. There was no issue. So the commentators throughout the generations offers various interpretations, but there's one powerful interpretation by the Hasidic masters with profound lessons and timely relevance for 2024 here in Oxford and Litchfield and Torrington. What Moses was saying was that the path to Pharaoh's heart travels through the heart of the Jewish people. If I can't persuade my own people that they're ready for redemption, then there's no way Pharaoh will get the message. Only when the Jewish people are convinced internally could I go ahead and share the message with Pharaoh. Now, we all feel this on an energetic level. If I'm not really convinced in the truth of any message, you'll feel the disconnect, and you too will have a hard time internalizing it genuinely. A parent who educates but is not really convinced in the truth and power of what he or she is teaching, success will be very limited. A teacher or lecturer will not truly impact people if he or she does not feel it in their gut. That's why we say when kids go to Chabad Hebrew school, the teachers are living and breathing what they're teaching. And therefore, you could see a kid when he's ready for his bar, bat mitzvah, the impact that their time in Chabad Hebrew school has on them. They're a different yid, different energy. Now, it's also true on a national, global level. If the Jewish people are internally not ready to believe that they can, and not only can, but kind of need to experience redemption, Pharaoh will never be able to hear the message. We are all connected in a deep and intricate bond. When the Jewish people change their paradigms, when they cease to tolerate the lying corruption of slavery and exile, when they will become sick and tired of being sick and tired, when they will refuse to tolerate abuse, injustice, cruelty, a new energy will be unleashed into the world, and Pharaoh too will feel it. So even if he doesn't like it, Pharaoh, King Pharaoh, Kepari, King Pharaoh will respond to the need of Am Yisrael. Now, it's particularly relevant when it comes to Israel and when it comes to the Jewish identity in the world. We're often so scared to say certain truths to a Gentile world because they might not listen or understand. Moses is teaching us otherwise. That in 2024, if the Jews get it, the world will get it. If we feel it in our bones, the world will respond. We blame the world for not listening. But sometimes we need to look into the mirror ourselves and ask, do we really understand? Are we proud of who we are? Are dealing us as neshamas, do we deal with inner shame that we're projecting on everyone else? David Ben-Gurion said it well. This was at a 1955 parade speech. Because our future depends not on what the Gentiles will say, but on what the Jews will do. You know, the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Israel Blau, who's the youngest survivor of Buchenwald. And actually, I had met once someone here who had in his office a picture of his father with Rabbi Lau as a child in Buchenwald. His father looked after Rabbi Lau. And the chief rabbi, Rabbi Lau, once shared, he says, I was privileged once to meet David Ben-Gurion, who was the architect of the state of Israel. And it was April 13th, 1972. He says, I received a phone call from David Ben-Gurion. At the time, he was living in Sde Boker, desert kibbutz, and he was a great admirer of the Pentateuch, of the Tanakh. And he called to ask him questions regarding two passages in the Torah, which he couldn't understand. He asked if we could meet up to discuss these issues at Sde Boker. And sadly, his health made it difficult for Ben-Gurion to walk. And Rabbi Lau says, I consider this a great honor indeed. And he said, when we met up, we discussed these questions for several hours. Rabbi Lau says, I had one question of my own. David, I asked, for years I've been telling a story that I heard about you during a period of the British Mandate of Palestine. I'd like to confirm the story if it's true or not. So Ben-Gurion asked, he says, what's the story in question? Rabbi Lau says, I proceeded to tell him what I heard. It happened in 1937. At the time that the Peel Commission was presiding over the British Mandate of Palestine. As Israel was then known, they were trying to go ahead and decide what to do about the Arab-Jewish conflict. And the Peel Committee was the only committee to suggest canceling the British Mandate. The same decision that the UN came and made a decision in 1947. At the time of the Peel Commission, Ben-Gurion was the head of the Jewish Agency and was the last witness to appear before the Peel Committee to appeal in favor of a Jewish state. And Ben-Gurion spent over 3 hours explaining the linkage between the Jews and the land of Israel, stating, this is our home. Now, everybody was impressed by Ben-Gurion's testimony. Everyone, that is, except for Lord Peel. By the way, Peel means elephant in Hebrew. And Mr. Ben-Gurion said, Lord Peel, may I ask a question? So Ben-Gurion replied, of course you can. That's why I'm here. So Lord Peel says, where were you born? So Ben-Gurion replies, Plonsk. Where is Plonsk? Ben-Gurion replies, Poland. So a large period of silence came after the reply. Finally, Lord Peel said in the barest whisper, very strange indeed. All the Arab leaders who have appeared before me were born in Palestine. Most of the Jewish leaders who appear before me were born in Eastern Europe. So Lord Peel spoke up saying, Mr. Ben-Gurion, the Arab people have a kushan entitling them to this land. A kushan was an Ottoman land deed. Do you have a document saying that Palestine belongs to you? And at this point, Ben-Gurion became aware of the Pentateuch in his hand that he swore upon while taking the oath to be witness to the commission. And he held it in triumph, and he exclaimed, Here is your kushan. Here is your document. It is the world's most highly respected book, and I believe that you British regard it with much respect too. We must have this land. So back in 1973, I asked Ben Gurion in his desert home, is this story really true? Did you hold up the Pentateuch and say, here is your document? Ben Gurion smiled and said, Emes v'yatzik. It's true and it's valid. So the chief rabbi says, I had another question to ask Ben Gurion. He said, I asked, imagine you have a document that entitles you to the land. Then you destroy it. You crumple it up, shred it, and tear it. You try and present this document to committee as a proof of entitlement for a piece of land. So the committee will not accept it in its torn and tattered condition. But look at the Jewish people. We pick and choose certain laws. We consider some laws archaic. In effect, we're destroying our own document. How can we therefore use it as entitlement to the land of Israel? And David Ben Gurion is a very smart man, so smart, in fact, that he refused to answer the question. And this is what we all need to understand. When we believe, truly believe, the world responds. When we're, true with ourselves, Pharaoh and the world respond. For many years, I watched how the Rebbe managed to inspire thousands to make such powerful and life-changing decisions, getting out of their comfort zones. Now, how did he do it? The answer is because everyone in the room felt in their bones that the Rebbe meant it, believed in what he was saying with every fiber of his being. It was not that his arguments were good, is that you felt the truth of his world, energetic. So the Jewish people as a nation can easily fall prey to this false humility. As a nation, despite our faults and shortcomings, we have much to be proud of. We have much to teach the world spiritually because of our rich biblical and rabbinic heritage. And we continue to contribute to mankind's material welfare in countless ways. We would do well to heed counsel the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Yosef Yitzchak Lubavitch, who said, man must be proud, but he must grow higher and higher and not wider and wider. What he meant to say was that if we use our pride to grow wider, we're bound to infringe upon another person's space. That is selfish arrogance, not proper pride. But if our pride motivates us to grow not wider, but to grow higher and higher, we displace no one. Instead, we draw closer to the Almighty and do what he demands of us. Jewish pride takes us higher and higher, and then the world responds. And this is the way we can inspire the world without being truly knowledgeable and committed Jews ourselves. Gentiles must respect Jews who are self-respecting, meaning Jews who are knowledgeable of Judaism, proud to carry its banners, and are conspicuous about doing so. That brings about such a beautiful response. When we're embarrassed and ignorant Jews, on the other hand, we elicit only scorn or worse, in addition condemning themselves to identity, oblivion. Pharaoh will listen, but how do we get our people to listen? And that's the spirit that we take out of this week's parsha. That no matter how much we know or don't yet know, we have to know that the greatest bracha, the greatest blessing of life, is that we have the ability to go higher and higher in every day. So in the merit of us taking our precious time of coming out to learn Torah, let's hope that God will do his mitzvah and very soon send us the ultimate time, which will be with the coming of Mashiach. Let's hope it happens speedy in our days. Any questions? I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom and only good news by you and the Mishpocha. And I thank you very much. And Am Yisrael Chai.